They say that we don't need 20 people being climate conscious perfectly. We need 8 billion people doing it imperfectly. Our next guests on From Code to Culture have taken some rather unique steps to living this way.
I got to put aside my very elitist academic, Cambridge WHO perspective and just really understand our waste problem from a very human ground up lens.
Somewhere in one of the pursuits of us figuring out, that what kind of a lifestyle we wanted, we had to go back to this whole one basic question of what is our normal. Maybe doing a lot of physical activity would be normal for us, that we are not ending up doing because we've outsourced many of our life processes, which is leading to some other kind of problems that we are having to deal with,
Their journeys might be different, but their destination was the same.
Congruence.
So what does congruence have to do with climate action? How did they manage to live a climate-conscious life in a fast-moving city like Bengaluru? And most important, is it even for everyone to live this way? We find out this in the next episode of Code to Culture.
Today we have two lovely guests and delighted to have both of you here. Sahar Mansoor, founder of Bare Necessities, India's first B Corp certified zero waste brand. She's been a militant in a way pushing for sustainability in her own lifestyle, and she wants to work with individuals and institutions to rethink about environment in everyday life. That's Reva Malik, co-founder of Primalise. Primalise is trying to bring congruence in purpose and pursuit of organizations. They live in an off-grid mud house where everything is sustainable in a very frugal, minimalistic way, sort of the ikigai life that one talks about. Delighted to have both of you here and look forward to our conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Last night I was thinking about this episode, and one thing that struck me is how did we reach here where we are? In the 70s and 80s, many of us who have grown up in that era, this is what we were. We didn't have fridge. We didn't have all the range of gadgets, equipments that we live with on a daily life, in our daily lives, right? Even electricity was not granted, right? And we've learned to deal with all that. We had those minimum number of dresses, minimum number of footwear, and everything was a very frugal era, recycle era that we did. It was passed on from one generation to another. Clearly, we've come to another world, and you guys are in some way resetting, going back to the era where we came from. Do you want to talk about some of the big shifts that you see from your lens? And each one of you, both of you actually, have a very different lens to look at. So maybe Reva, you want to start with the journey, and how do you see these big shifts that may have happened in consumption over your time frame that you've lived?
Thanks for having me here, Malini, and feels good to be part of this concept that you're talking about, the challenging certain issues which we need to address as a collective. Yeah, you're right when you say that, we've come a long way. We've come a long way from making things easily accessible for ourselves, which was a need then, to now, being under this illusion of false control, that, as if we have control over everything. Being in an illusion that the resources are unlimited. A reality check on probably during the 80s, like you're talking about, maybe during that time, we were engaging with what is real rather than an illusion right now, an illusion of...
Can you explain that? When you say illusion, what do you mean by that?
An illusion that at the click of a button, we'll have light. That light is abundant, it's available. That access to all kinds of resources is abundant to everybody. And when I say being in touch with the real, to actually know what happens in the process of this light being available to us, if, say, for example, sunlight we see coming every day, we know that on certain days we'll have full sunlight and on certain other days we'll not have enough sunlight. And the span of the day is the limit that we'll have sunlight from dawn to dusk. That's engaging with the real. From the source of where the sunlight comes from, we are engaging with the real from the origin of it. If we are collecting our rainwater, we are engaging with rainwater from the origin, so, where it comes from in reality. And if we've captured as much we've captured, we know this much is available for our consumption. If we source something with an illusion that money is buying us everything and it's as much money we have, things will be available, I think that's the illusion I'm talking about. That somewhere maybe this illusion is giving us the power. Whether we really have that control and power is a question that we all are sitting with.
Sahar, what about you? How do you look at this shift? And I'm not sure you were in the 80s and 90s, but help me get a sense. How do you remember and the arc of evolution of our consumption that has happened?
So I grew up in the 90s, and I think it was a special time. I remember the Mandi van coming home, like a small mini tempo, once a month with all of the groceries, all of the dals, rice, everything. And I have two older sisters. So my mom, we would all sit there and we would all kind of go through the checklist. And each of us was responsible to account for something. You're like, 1 kg of this, 1 kg of that. And then we take it from their dabbas, put it into our own dabbas, and put it into our ceramic containers, into our pantry, in our storeroom. And I think it's a very special generation, I think. I think we are kind of the glue. We've kind of seen how it used to be. We've seen the kind of mandiwalas come home. And then we've seen the switch where suddenly, plastic kind of changed our economies.
You
and
know
our
what
lifestyle.
That generation is called? Sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Seriously, it is.
Yeah,
go
I think
ahead.
we are the glue. I think we are the sandwich. You're right. So I think we then saw basically this whole like westernized notion of consumption and FMCG goods kind of come to our lives, where grocery stores in that kind of a format became very kind of part of our day to day. And I think it's quite actually different from how it used to be. It's also quite, I think, unnatural to our Indian DNA, where it was very democratic. You would go and get how much produce you want. You want, 25 grams, 250 grams or 500 grams or 1 kg, versus you're getting these pre-dictated amount of packaged food in a Ziploc, in a plastic, etc. So I think we're a really special generation because we've seen how it used to be and then we saw it change. And I think if there is any generation that has the ability to kind of move it, move the needle in terms of going back to a more sustainable lifestyle, it's us who's witnessed it. So I think we're a special sandwich generation, like you said. And I think I remember the days where, we would go to Park with my dad and my sisters, and that was part of our lifestyle, and I lived really close to it, etc. And on Sundays, we would take the blue Fiat to go to Russell Market to get the groceries, the fresh produce, etc. With dad. And then we have special bags that were used only for that, and with like a nice kind of sturdy bags that we would always use for it. I can literally imagine the colors as I'm speaking. While the pulses would come from the Mandiwala, the produce would come weekly fresh on Sundays with our morning post Cubbon Park with dad at Russell Market. So I think I've seen from that's what I relate to when you were kind of just sharing, to then now everything being available at the click of a button within 10 minutes or so. Yeah.
Maybe it's also industrialization of consumption that has happened, right? I mean, for us, we really sort of grew up in a artisanal way, right? Where everything was a local kitchen, all that. But for you and for both of you, actually, there has been, for you, it's a steady sort of evolution of your own self to discover your own approach to living sustainably, and you as well. Reva, do you want to talk about what was the inflection point and that brought you here? And we'll talk about the lifestyle that you've embraced over the last few years, living in an off-grid house in a very sustainable manner. You've lived you live in a way that you produce as little garbage, as little waste as you can. And also you kind of founded an organization which demonstrates that lifestyle. So Reva, do you want to talk about what were some of the inflection points in your journey? You were like a normal consumer, I'm presuming, and then slowly some of these inflection points that helped you arrive at where you are, and then talk about your lifestyle as of today, what it is like. For many people, it would be like a very unique, very different, very special kind of life, which they think as very different. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's very normal though.
Yes. When would that be?
Maybe 20 years ago,
when
and
you
it's
were
been a
in-
gradual process.
Yeah, you were in Delhi at that time?
Yes, in Delhi, and going about with life, trying to build a house and trying to raise a child, and then slowly moving to Bangalore, raising 2 children. Our daughter's cousin also shifted in with us, and then kind of exploring together through conversations that, what is the ideal setup for us. I mean, these conversations were ongoing throughout. And I think at some point, the running thread that we figured out was the certain disconnect that we would feel ourselves and we would see around also.
Give us an example. Do you remember something that really triggered you?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things actually, not
Please
one
remember.
or two, but this whole disconnect from what's happening in the outside world when we would hear news, whether it is migration, people moving away from their native places, struggle to find jobs, poverty of in various ways that was coming through, that we would see and we would hear through news. And also water scarcity in Bangalore became a major issue. I think it was during that time that we felt this disconnect is just showing up in so many different places, and that we are not feeling it as much as we should. All that we hear happening around, why isn't it causing us as much pain that we do something about it? That started bothering us.
One question before you go on to this connected life. So you were a family of 4, your husband, 2 children. Did all of them feel the same way, or it was triggering? There was a differential in the triggers that all of you were experiencing?
Yeah, so we were a family of 4, and then gradually Ranjan's parents and my parents also shifted in with us. So the family was increasing, and 3 different generations. The ideas were different about life, and that made the conversations richer. And maybe that helped the conviction become stronger, that this is what is required. And this is, I think it helped that the 3 generations engaged in various ways. And that's why it took us some time also to come to an alignment.
So what was that period like, that transition period of having a certain kind of lifestyle and moving to a more connected lifestyle? How many years did it take for you to?
It wasn't abrupt for us, because moving into an off-grid home happened much later. But the processes of life had started changing much before we moved into.
Sure.
So actually we feel this wasn't the changing point for us, that we moved into a mud house. Our life processes started gradually changing.
Can you take us through that little steps that you took, and then the mud house that you live in now, which is an off-grid house? How did that happen, and what this house feels like now?
Yeah, I think the mud house helped us live life in the way we wanted, in a more wholesome manner, because things just kind of literally translated for us in this house. But before this, small shifts in our usual urban setup in an apartment where everything was available, because our parents were also there. So in a way, we also wanted things that they couldn't, have for themselves, the comforts they couldn't have if we were able to provide them. I think we also wanted that. So the setup was in a manner that all kinds of conveniences were there. We wouldn't use those conveniences for ourselves. Like if the microwave goes out of order, we then felt that, okay, let's not replace it. If the mixer goes out of order, we won't replace it. If the maids are coming home to clean up the house helps, they go only to our parents' side and clean up the house. We would clean up our room and our area ourselves with our children. because those are privileges for the older generation. We all ought to do our work ourselves and at least respect handwork, physical work in a way. That became a value in the house, that this has to be done ourselves. So those kinds of small things. Once I remember the gas cylinder was over, and so this just had become a game in our house, that something which is over or gone out of order, let's just wait, let's not be in a hurry to fix things or replace it. So then before figuring out what has to be done, we felt, okay, let's go to the terrace, and then we set up a small chula with bricks lying around, and then we actually lit up a fire on the terrace and made food there. We had parathas. The whole family was involved in just, taking stuff from kitchen to the terrace and then sitting around, and one paratha at a time is happening and everybody's waiting, and it was a longish dinner that we had. It was so lovely. Mm-hmm. And then which left us with the question, why does this happen only when something goes out of order or is over? I think then that urge and craving that, we need to have such times more often. Us as a family is coming together to, make things happen. Life processes are not outsourced, because I think a lot of damage happens when we distance ourselves from the real. Like, all these things distance us from what has to be done, what the moment demands, I think. And these life processes become a way of just maybe enforcing that connect. For us, it happened in this manner.
Okay. What about you, Sahar? How was this discovery for you and the journey for you?
Yeah. I think I've been a little environmentalist since I was little, but I never really knew that word.
Explain
or had the
that.
vocabulary.
What did you mean?
Because we spend so much time in nature. I think my dad loved nature. He always made it a point for us to, whether it was summer holidays or weekends, we were coffee picking in Coorg and Chikmagalur, jumping into waterfalls. And there was always, that was what our time was planned around us being outdoors. When I was in undergrad, I studied environmental planning and political science, and then I moved on to study environmental law and environmental economics at Cambridge. So, I really knew I cared about sustainability, and I think I was academically pursuing it. I wanted to be an environmental professor at some point. But I think my big aha moment was really, I was working at a solar energy company in Bangalore.
Which company?
Selco Foundation.
Okay.
So working in rural Karnataka, I loved my job. Every 7 to 10 days, I was in some gorgeous part of Karnataka I hadn't been before. I had the best holidays of my life. But essentially, it was a backpack, a kurta, my toothbrush, and that was kind of what it was. And we worked on energy interventions to help solarize any of the needs. So, I've worked with women who had a sewing machine and then solarize it, papa rolling machines, roti rolling machines, do a lot of pilots. Once it's successful, we give it to the social enterprise, which is a well-oiled machine, 50 branches, operations, maintenance, service, all of that kind of taken place. So my project was largely in rural Karnataka, but at office, I set up a composting unit, I set up the segregation bins, and all that. So it was no...
This is Selco
at
office.
Selco office.
Oh, okay.
So, and everyone, it was no surprise, or it was not, everyone knew in office that I was really into my waste and, all of that. Because of, how I would have Naril Pani after work.
This would be
2015.
2015 or so.
Yeah, when I moved back.
And how much of an oddball were you? And in fact, you could take us back to a little in the college days, right? When you are young, you are teenagers or just growing out of that, where peer pressure is such a big deal. You want to sort of fit in.
Yeah.
What was it like for you? How much?
It was quite funny. I mean,
talk about that a little.
For sure. Actually, this happened more in my 2015 to 2018 when I moved back.
Yeah.
Like, I would go to even a music concert. I mean, I was 23 or something, and I would bring my own coffee mug, and I was like, can I have my beverage here? Or we're going in, and then I've held up the line because I'm saying, do you really need a plastic wristband for me? Can I have a stamp? Do you have a stamp? And they were just, all my friends were like, do you have to? Like, we're going to have a fun time, So I think they laughed it off, and they everyone. I think I'm really lucky to have some very patient friends and family around me. But
Who understood?
yeah, who were like, okay, fine. If you're going to do this, you're going to catch up with us in 5-10 minutes. Fine, So there was actually a waste picker community, a waste warrior community, like I'd like to call them, very close to a very fancy Bangalore International Airport. And they're an urban community. They're migratory. They live in very informal plastic home, blue top housing. So when this project came through Selco's door, they said, okay, sir, why don't you also get on it? But which was quite different for me, because I was usually on the rural projects. So I said, yes, of course. I was excited to do so. Essentially, we in Selco Foundation, the entry intervention is basically solar panels on the tea day. When everyone come for their morning chai, they plug in their battery, go on for a day's work, come back, and they have a fully charged battery that they plug into their solar lantern. So while I was working with this community in the morning, I would actually follow them on my cycle. So between 5 and 9 a.m., I would kind of see the routes they would take, how much, what are they collecting, then ask them questions. How much do you get for 1 kg of plastic, 1 kg of coconut, 1 kg of, corrugated cardboard. Indian hair is actually a huge thing. I learned all of these things from my morning cycles. Rides with them, and obviously I got to know like how many kids they have, how often they go home, and got to. So for me, actually, that was my aha moment. I got to very, very genuinely, honestly put aside my very like elitist academic, Cambridge WHO perspective, and just really understand our waste problem from a very human ground up lens. And it just felt kind of wrong, but also sad that someone was actually going through all of this to pick up something that might give them something, right? And, I heard stories of thumbs being cut off because there was glass mixed with what they were trying to go for. I saw sanitary napkins with high value recyclables that were made. And I just felt that in terms of like the dignity of life, that was, we should be able to manage our own waste, and it shouldn't be someone else's. And it also was a very like a dichotomy that there were young emerging Indian brands that were celebrating millets and doing good stuff, but everything was still packaged in plastic. So everything was landing up as waste around our city that we love so much, and many landfills around you, besides you, and you're hearing about the landfills that are catching on fire, etc. So it was just there was no, I felt like there was no congruence between what I was studying, reading, doing, working in, and myself. And I thought I had to go beyond the regular of just composting, getting my own water bottle. And I went cold turkey, and I went kind of crazy on how to live a very, very low waste lifestyle. So much so that if anyone gave me anything in plastic, I would say no. I would go the extra mile to only one grocery store to get all of my groceries, Buffalo Bag Collective, with all of my dabbas and my bags. And then, I was just really, really very militant about my lifestyle.
And you're staying by yourself, living by yourself?
No, I live with my mom. I moved back home to live with mom.
Okay.
And again, bless her, she's the most understanding human. But it took a minute. Like, she has her own rules. And I have moved back in after being away. So I had to obviously be very respectful of that. But I noticed that actually the easiest place for me to start was my toilet, my bathroom, my personal care routine, because you have full control over what you use there. That's not a decision of the house. It is a decision of what you want to use. So I started there with my personal care. So menstrual cups, stainless steel razor, making my own soaps. I took soap making classes, asking Nani what shampoo did you use, then trying to do the Rita and boiling the soap nuts and all of that. So I first just started to incorporate it, to which my mom was, looking and seeing what the internal shift that's going on in her daughter's life. And then I noticed for my mom, what really helped was actually the co-benefits. For me, maybe it was getting our groceries and produce in a sustainable manner, in cardboard or, in my own dabbas and all that. But for her, she, loves working out. She's practicing yoga for the past 35 odd years. So for her, it was the health benefit. She's like, oh, this is a really good produce, like high quality, really nice, fresh vegetables, nostalgic of what she ate when she was growing up. So for her, maybe it was more of the health benefit. And maybe for me, it was more of the reducing my miles, and the carbon footprint of the food, the plastic footprint of my food, and things like that. So it was about finding also those co-benefits with your loved ones, and then I had to also say quite politely about like gifts that I would receive without hurting people's intentions, and so I think I noticed that people around me were mostly just noticing, and they also kind of maybe instead of buying me some fast fashion clothes, they would think again, or would so it kind of changed the way people around me started to also interact as well.
Going back to Reva, tell us about your life and lifestyle here today, as of today. What is it? The journey that you described and where it has got you. Tell us a bit more about the house, the lifestyle, and to us looking from outside, it looks very special, very different, very unique. But we would love to sort of know a bit more about that.
I think for us that house is maybe an extension of ourselves.
Can you describe the house to us?
I will.
Yeah.
If I say that maybe to be able to live in such a house, it's the comfort is what comes to my mind to the fore, that it feels like our skin. To me it feels like my skin, extension of my body. So for that to be able to introspect that what kind of a person I am, what kind of a person Ranjan is, both of us together, if there was an exoskeleton that we had, this house is that for us. So it's a mud house. A team called Gram Vidya, they helped us build it. It is vernacular architecture, the architecture of this land, in a way. Rammed earth walls, Mangalore-tiles for the roof. The roof captures the rainwater. So while we were building the house, this was an essential that, we should be able to capture all the water that we need for the entire year. So looking at the monsoon, Bangalore monsoons, how much it rains here, and what kind of an area would we need so that 2 or 3 of us are able to sustain on this water through the year. So no outside water is needed for us to live in this house. No outside electricity is also needed because...
So no outside water for anything, drinking, washing?
Yeah, that's the idea. And all the water that we use, we've reduced our usage of water, and all the used water is recycled to be used again. Okay. So so through the Greywater system, through the black water biodigester that we have, the recycled water comes back into the plot to water the plants that we've grown around.
What about drinking water?
We harvest that, rainwater. It rains so much in Bangalore.
So rainwater gets cleaned up to drink, is that correct?
Yes, rainwater, just through the filter, the normal filter, and sometimes a muslin cloth, folded muslin cloth, it goes through that and it's ready for us to drink.
And that sustains through the year for you?
Through the year, yeah. So we are able to capture around 50,000 liters in a year. And that's as much as we use also through the year. So it's around 100 to 150 liters per day, both of us or 3 of us use at home, and we are able to manage with the rainwater. Okay. So in fact, we had to build extra storage sump for the water because it rains quite much in Bangalore. So this, this was a realization after starting harvesting water. Otherwise, we didn't know. We actually thought it won't be enough for us. But once you start harvesting, you feel, oh my God, it's actually the tank is overflowing and half the monsoon is still, there to store. So a lot of water that we are able to harvest.
On water, staying on water, you did mention that you don't have piped water, right? Explain that to me.
This question came to us during one of these conversations, that actually how much water do we need to sustain ourselves, in a day or a month or the whole year. That actually, brought us to this thing that actually when we open a tap, we don't realize how much water flows down. Each activity during the day needs some water, whether it's brushing our teeth or taking bath or washing our clothes or cooking food, washing vegetables, all these kinds of things. So to be able to gauge how much water we need, we started measuring. So we felt actually it's not going to work with taps because it's so difficult to measure how much is there and how much we need and how much we are using. So we felt let's just go off taps. Let's not have taps in our house. So the whole rainwater through the roof comes into our sumps. We have those traditional hand pumps connected to our sump. We draw water from the sump directly. So gravity takes water into the sump and we draw water, and our toilet, bathroom and kitchen are just very close by to where the hand pump is. So we just fill the bucket and take it to the kitchen. We fill the bucket and take it to the toilet.
What about electricity, gas connection? Tell us, how do you manage without it? I mean, we can't imagine our lives without that. The gadgets that we use, our cell phone, TV, refrigerator, all that.
When we started thinking on what are the core essentials that we want to live life by, I think one of the things was that we will use regenerative resources for our use.
What do you mean by regenerative resources?
Something that just keeps coming to us again and again. Like
Renewable.
Sunlight happens renewable, regenerative, you know, that sunlight happens every day. It's very it's a predictable resource which will come out in, you know, in the day, every day. It will rain every season, you know, it's very predictable. Vegetables will keep growing. Whereas fossil fuels are in a way a depleting resource. It takes many years for fossil fuels to get formed, and to be using them on an everyday basis, you know, in our cooking and in our mobility, in our vehicles, just started feeling very odd that, you know, so many years it's taken for that resource to get built up, and it's there deep down into the earth. Maybe it's not even meant for us. It's humanly not possible to reach that, either groundwater or, you know, fossil fuels. Though we've devised ways to reach those, but maybe not in such quantities on an everyday basis. That was one principle that we kept in mind. What if we were to go off that? You know, what if we were not to use fossil fuels in our house? Only during monsoons, when it's thick cloud, we are able to cook only once a day in the solar cooker. Rest, so as a backup, we have a firewood stove, a chulha at home, which the you know, branches cut from our own trees that we have to keep pruning now and then, otherwise they grow very big. So we use those branches as fuel in that chulha, or our neighbors who have to anyway throw their coconut shells. We use those coconut shells as fuel in our firewood chulha to use, you know, to either sometimes make rotis and parathas, which we are not able to make in the solar cooker. We now and then love to have those, and also as a backup during cloudy days. So food happens there, and the ash that comes out from the chulha, actually we wash our vessels with that. So in a way, a closed loop. So the idea of living in such a house was also to be able to close all the loops. Because in nature, actually this is an inspiration from nature, that everything is cyclic. So to be able to close all the loops was one way of living life, and another was to mend all the broken loops. In a way, we had gotten so used to living a linear kind of a life. You buy things from a shop shelf, and the packaging, like you were saying, Sahar, it goes into the dustbin. This is so linear. We don't know where this object or a product has come from.
What about cell phone, mobility, refrigerator? I mean, I can't imagine how...
No, cell phones and all happen. Yeah, we work on laptops.
So you recharge?
We charge them. So we have a solar inverter at home, an 850 VA. Again, we wanted to keep things to the minimal, you know, and this thumb rule would apply in every place in the house, to have minimal storage, to have minimal vessels also, you know, and plates and spoons, only as much as we need, so that we also wash them less, to not have curtains in the house, to not have furniture also, and, you know, use the ground space as much as possible to sit and work on. So minimal became the thumb rule. So the solar inverter also charges only our phones and laptops, and an occasional tea kettle or a rice cooker that can function on it. And then it charges again next morning. So it's actually through the day is all that you have to think of, that, you know, we should have enough charge in our phones and laptops, and an occasional tea kettle. I think so that, keeping that in mind, we are able to run our work and, you know, our phones. But yeah, we also wanted to go off all the other appliances like fridges and washing machines and all, because then you need more power for that.
Yeah.
And we felt that somewhere in one of the pursuits of us figuring out, that what kind of a lifestyle we wanted, we had to go back to this whole one basic question of what is our normal. And in this pursuit of what would be a normal for us human beings, maybe doing a lot of physical activity would be normal for us, that we are not ending up doing because we've outsourced many of our life processes, which is leading to some other kind of problems that we are having to deal with. As human beings, what do we ought to do became a pursuit for us.
Sure.
This led us to actually reducing all of this.
Yeah.
And we are also those kinds of people, if comfort is there, then okay, why wash clothes if the washing machine is there?
Yeah.
Now, if we don't have a washing machine, we end up washing our clothes. If we don't have a refrigerator, we end up eating fresh. We grow our own food. Every day we plug in.
But isn't it logistically very difficult and complex? You like for storing milk and things that sort of expire very quickly.
Actually, each of these steps would lead us to, connected questions that do we need milk? Do adults need milk as much as we consume? Isn't milk, nature designed human beings in a way that infants and toddlers need more milk than adult grown-ups.
Got it.
So these kind of questions and researches and conversations with friends who also think alike, actually we've reduced milk consumption. Maybe now and then we love to have tea, so some milk goes into the tea, which we either buy from the neighboring Goshala and you don't have to store it, or sometimes, some packets are available that you can just, small packets that you keep for a day or 2 days, it won't go spoiled. Or turn milk into curds and it extends its shelf life for another day. So those kinds of things I think we started using.
What about you, Sahar? What does your lifestyle look like right now?
Yeah, for sure.
There is one bare necessities we'll talk about, but your own personal lifestyle, there was a journey and where you have come today.
No, for sure. But first I have to say, Reva, that's so beautiful. I mean, I've watched videos of your house and everything. So it's just so nice to hear from you. And you're my inspiration. My husband and I would love to be, you in a few years, you and your family in a few years, inshallah. For right now, it's more what we can control. So I think we're quite mindful of how we buy our produce, our food, our lentils, reducing our kind of plastic footprint in our day-to-day consumption. Largely our personal care, home, kitchen is all, either things that we make or things that Bear makes that we have in our own house. I think the other thing that was quite intentionally done was when I first bought a cycle with my first salary from Selco, and I would ride my cycle to my boss's house, and then she would drive me to work 3 days a week, and then 3 days a week I would borrow my mom's car that I would share with her, and then I would drive to work. So carpooling was part of my lifestyle. And then maybe 3 years ago, when I felt I had enough capital saved up, I purchased a car, but it had to be electric. So I bought a Tata electric car. So being quite mindful whenever I can, and whenever there is, do I need it? But if I do need it, and if I'm going to go that way, what is the most low carbon option that I can possibly explore? And that was kind of how I thought about it. And not just that, it's even life events. We had a completely plastic-free wedding, a low-waste wedding. We tried to offset our carbon. We reused all of the decor. We used only reusable things. We started with a tree planting. We ended with a cleanup. So we were quite mindful about there was no food waste. So designing everything, even if it's a birthday, it's like we're going to meet in Carbon Park and have a picnic. Everyone bring your own thing with your own dabba. And, so being quite intentional about planning all of that. Of course, we compost our waste. We segregate our waste when we have all of our dry waste, etc. But it is quite a low waste life.
So how much waste do you create?
Yeah. In my thick of my 20s, when I moved back and I was like, I'm going to do this, I did have a jar of waste. And it slowly grew, the jar, but I think the pandemic was a shift, because then I no longer could go to my own, vegetable wala and all of that. And I had to get a little okay with deliveries coming in. But even then, I think my mom and I did quite mindfully about how often, how we could plan for the week. So we are, reducing the amount of deliveries. We had a farm from Ooty that was actually sending us produce in a cardboard box. So that's kind of how we are currently living.